The young cartel member recognized the scar on the border agent's neck, a distinctive mark he'd seen in surveillance photos from Colombia. His blood ran cold as he realized this wasn't some small-town border patrol officer. This was La Cazadora, the hunter. Welcome to Daily Story. Before we dive into this extraordinary tale of hidden identity and deadly expertise, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like these deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button to join our community. The Nogales border crossing sat like a concrete island in the Arizona desert, where the imaginary line between two countries became very real through chain-link fences, guard towers, and the constant presence of armed agents. It was here, in the relentless heat and dust, that Agent Maria Santos had worked for 6 years, checking documents and processing the endless stream of vehicles crossing between Mexico and the United States. At 38, Maria had the weathered look of someone who'd spent years under the desert sun. She stood 5 feet 6 inches with dark hair always pulled back in a regulation ponytail, and wore the same green Border Patrol uniform as every other agent. To casual observers, she looked like any other federal employee doing a difficult job in harsh conditions. Her colleagues knew her as by-the-book Santos, meticulous with paperwork, professional with travelers, and utterly reliable during her shifts. She arrived exactly on time, worked methodically through each inspection, and left promptly when her replacement arrived. In 6 years, she had never called in sick, never requested special assignment, and never drew attention to herself. What her fellow agents didn't know, what the smugglers and cartel scouts who observed the crossing couldn't guess, was that Agent Maria Santos had once been the most feared operative in South America. Codename, La Cazadora, the hunter. For 12 years, Maria had worked for a joint task force that officially didn't exist, tracking cartel leaders through the jungles of Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru. She had infiltrated drug networks, eliminated high-value targets, and dismantled trafficking operations that moved billions of dollars worth of narcotics. Her methods were precise, her results were legendary, and her identity was known only to a handful of intelligence officials at the highest levels of government. The transition from covert operations to border security had been part of a carefully planned extraction. After 12 years of deep cover work, Maria's identity had been compromised when a cartel informant recognized her during an operation in Medellin. Rather than risk exposure of the entire task force, she had been officially killed in a staged helicopter crash and given a new identity as a federal employee with an unremarkable background in law enforcement. The scar on her neck was a souvenir from her last mission, a thin white line left by a cartel assassin's knife during a close-quarters fight in a Bogotá warehouse. She had killed 3 men that night before escaping with intelligence that led to the arrest of one of South America's most powerful drug lords. The scar was barely visible unless someone knew exactly where to look, but to those familiar with her legend, it was as distinctive as a fingerprint. Maria had chosen border patrol work because it allowed her to use her language skills and cultural knowledge while remaining in legitimate federal employment. The irony wasn't lost on her. After years of hunting cartels in their home territory, she now processed their low-level smugglers at an official crossing point. But it was honest work that didn't require her to maintain elaborate cover stories or make decisions that kept her awake at night. Her small apartment in Nogales was spartanly furnished but comfortable. She lived alone, maintained minimal social contacts, and had built the kind of quiet routine that helped former operatives adjust to civilian life. She attended Spanish-language Catholic Mass on Sundays, shopped at the local grocery store, and had even started dating Carlos, a high school teacher who made her laugh and never asked too many questions about her past. The night everything changed started like any other late shift. Maria reported for duty at 10 p.m., relieving Agent Rodriguez, who briefed her on the evening's activity. Traffic was light, mostly commercial trucks and late travelers crossing back from day trips to Mexico. The radio chatter was routine, and the July heat was finally beginning to ease as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. At 11:47 p.m., a modified Ford F-250 approached her inspection lane. The truck looked ordinary enough, slightly weathered, Arizona plates, 2 occupants in the cab. But Maria's trained eye immediately noticed details that her fellow agents might have missed. The rear suspension was modified to carry extra weight. The driver's hands showed calluses consistent with weapons handling. The passenger was scanning the area with the systematic attention of someone conducting surveillance. "Good evening. Purpose of your visit to Mexico?" Maria asked in English, following standard protocol while mentally cataloging everything she observed. "Just visiting friends in Nogales," the driver responded. His accent was Mexican, but his clothes and mannerisms suggested someone who spent significant time in the United States. "How long was your visit?" "Just a few hours." Maria requested their documents and began the routine inspection process. As she examined their IDs, she noticed the passenger, a young man in his early 20s, was staring at her with an expression that went beyond normal nervousness. His eyes were fixed on her neck, specifically on the faint scar that was barely visible above her uniform collar. The young man's face went pale. He whispered something urgently to the driver in rapid Spanish that Maria caught despite their attempt at discretion. Es la Cazadora. Tenemos que irnos.
Ahora. That's the hunter. We need to leave. Now.
Maria felt the familiar cold alertness that had kept her alive through 12 years of covert operations. These weren't casual smugglers or opportunistic criminals. The passenger had recognized her, which meant he had access to intelligence networks that knew about her classified past. I need you both to step out of the vehicle, Maria said, her voice maintaining professional calm while her hand moved closer to her service weapon. The driver hesitated. Is there a problem, officer?
Routine inspection. Please step out.
Instead of complying, the driver's hand moved towards something beneath his seat. Maria saw the movement and reacted with the split-second timing that had made her legendary in South America. She drew her Glock 19 and had it aimed at the driver before he could complete his reach.
Hands visible. Now.
The driver slowly raised his hands, but his passenger was already moving. The young man lunged for the glove compartment while simultaneously shouting in Spanish, Es la Cazadora.
Matenla. It's the hunter. Kill her.
Maria's training took over completely. She moved left to create distance while maintaining her sight picture on the driver. Control, this is Santos at lane 7. I need immediate backup. 2 suspects, possible weapons. The passenger emerged from the glove compartment with a compact pistol. Maria made the decision that would reveal just how different she was from her fellow Border Patrol agents. Instead of taking cover and waiting for backup, she advanced on the vehicle using movement techniques that weren't taught in standard law enforcement training. She put 2 precise rounds into the passenger's weapon arm, disabling him without causing fatal injury. The driver attempted to start the truck and flee, but Maria was already at his window with her weapon pressed against the glass.
Engine off.
Hands on the steering wheel. Within minutes, the crossing was flooded with backup agents, emergency medical personnel, and supervisors responding to the shots-fired call. As EMTs treated the wounded passenger, Agent Thompson, the senior agent on duty, approached Maria with a confused expression. Santos, what the hell happened here? You moved like... I don't know what you moved like. Maria was securing the suspect's weapons when she found what she'd expected, high-end pistols with serial numbers that had been professionally removed, and communications equipment more sophisticated than typical smugglers would carry. They recognized me, Maria said simply. Recognized you? From where? Before Maria could answer, the wounded passenger began talking to the EMTs in Spanish, apparently delirious from pain medication. Maria understood every word. La Cazadora. She killed Ramirez in Bogota, burned down the whole network. We've been looking for her for years. Agent Thompson looked at Maria with new understanding. Santos, who are you really? The next 4 hours brought federal agents from 3 different agencies to the small border crossing. DEA, FBI, and officials from departments that didn't advertise their acronyms arrived to take custody of the suspects and debrief Maria about the incident. Senior Agent Rebecca Chun from the DEA's El Paso Division conducted the official interview in the crossing's administrative office. Agent Santos, our preliminary investigation suggests these individuals were part of a Sinaloa cartel intelligence cell. They were apparently conducting surveillance on border crossings, looking for specific individuals. Do you have any idea why they might have recognized you? Maria looked out the window at the desert landscape she had come to think of as home. 6 years of quiet routine were about to end with this conversation. Agent Chun, I need to make a phone call to Langley. There are people who need to be notified that my cover has been compromised.
Langley?
As in CIA. As in people who officially don't exist, investigating operations that never happened, concerning an agent who was supposed to have died 6 years ago. The phone call to her former handler, Director James Walsh, lasted 30 minutes and resulted in a helicopter arriving at the border crossing before dawn. Maria watched through the office window as federal agents in civilian clothes took custody of her suspects and began sanitizing the scene. Director Walsh, a man she hadn't seen since her extraction from Colombia, entered the office carrying a secure briefcase and wearing the expression of someone dealing with a complication he'd hoped to avoid.
Maria, we have a problem.
The cartels have apparently been searching for La Cazadora for years. Tonight's incident means your location is compromised.
How compromised?
The suspects had GPS tracking devices and communications equipment. They've already transmitted your location to their network. We're tracking chatter from 3 different cartel organizations discussing the border agent in Arizona. Maria understood the implications immediately. How long do I have? Perhaps 48 hours before this crossing becomes a target. We need to extract you immediately.
And then what? Another new identity?
Another quiet job in another desert town. Walsh opened his briefcase and removed a tablet displaying intelligence reports.
Or you could come back.
The cartels have evolved their operations significantly since you left. They're using technology and tactics that our current agents struggle to counter. We need someone with your specific expertise. Maria reviewed the intelligence summaries cartel operations that had successfully penetrated U.S. law enforcement, smuggling networks using military-grade equipment, and violence that was escalating beyond anything the cartels had previously attempted. What kind of operations?
Deep cover work.
Long-term infiltration of cartel command structures. The kind of missions that require someone who can think like them because she's already beaten them. Maria thought about the quiet life she had built in Nogales. Carlos, who made her laugh. Sunday Mass at the small church where she'd found peace. The routine work that didn't require her to make life and death decisions. But she also thought about the intelligence reports showing cartel violence spreading into American communities, the sophisticated operations that were overwhelming traditional law enforcement approaches, and the reality that her peaceful interlude was ending whether she chose it or not. What about my cover here? Agent Santos has a life, relationships, responsibilities. Agent Santos was killed in the line of duty tonight defending the border crossing. There will be a funeral with full honors. Maria Santos, the person, needs to disappear again.
And La Cazadora?
Goes back to work. 2 days later, the local newspapers reported that Border Patrol Agent Maria Santos had died heroically while stopping a cartel smuggling operation. Her colleagues attended a memorial service where she was posthumously awarded the Medal of Valor for exceptional courage in the line of duty. Carlos received a letter explaining that Maria had been killed protecting the border she had served faithfully for 6 years. He would never know that the woman he'd fallen in love with was still alive, but living under another identity in another country, hunting the same cartels she'd been tracking for over a decade. 6 months later, intelligence reports from South America began describing a new operative working against cartel networks. The cartels called her La Fantasma, the ghost, because she appeared to know their operations better than they knew them themselves. What they didn't know was that La Fantasma was the same woman who had once been La Cazadora, who had briefly been Agent Maria Santos, and who had learned that some skills are too valuable to stay retired. Maria had discovered that her expertise in tracking and dismantling cartel networks wasn't just a job, it was a calling that followed her regardless of what name she used or what uniform she wore. Sometimes the most dangerous battles are fought by people who understand the enemy because they've been fighting them longer than anyone else. Sometimes the best way to protect the border is to cross it and take the fight to the source. Maria Santos had learned that true service sometimes requires giving up the life you want to protect the country you love, one mission at a time. So now I ask you, have you ever known someone whose quiet competence suggested they had experience with much more demanding challenges? Someone who handled dangerous situations with a calmness that seemed to come from deeper training? Share their story in the comments below. Tell us about the hidden experts in your life, the ones who protect us in ways we don't always understand. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that protection often comes from the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button and join the Daily Story community. We're here to honor the silent guardians, the undercover protectors, the people who keep us safe while remaining invisible. Thank you for watching, and remember, the next time you encounter a border agent, police officer, or security professional, look a little closer. You might be meeting someone who has dedicated their life to protecting others in ways that most people will never know.